Joining us with her take on what's currently playing out on the market scene is independent global market analyst Boitumelo Letsuma. Boitumelo, hi. Good to chat to you once again. It's quite a volatile world at the moment. I see China with their benchmark interest rates. They've left things unchanged. Now, that's an interesting move, isn't it?
It certainly is. Thank you so much for having me, Ray. China, market participants in China are coming back from the holiday in celebration of the Lunar New Year. So activity has been picking up in that region. And the central bank did hold its 1-year prime rate at 3% and the five-year prime rate, the 5-year rate at 3.5%. And this was actually in line with expectations. So it's indicating that the authorities aren't necessarily in a rush to implement monetary easing yet, and they basically more trying to strike a careful balance between supporting growth and also maintaining financial stability. And when I read one of the sell side notes, the analyst mentioned that there could be scope for interest rate cuts within the year, but the timing is really hard to predict, and it won't necessarily be occurring within the first quarter. So throughout the year, that is a development that I will be looking closely into.
Yeah, I think all of us will be looking very closely at what happens there. Now, the oil price, it's at, I think, 7-week highs. What's happening there? Is it all about Iran and the United States? We still don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so they have been edging a little bit higher, trading at levels we last saw around July, August last year. And this really has been on the back of the geopolitical risks, given the upcoming talks with the US and Iran. And this has really been a long-standing dispute around Iran's nuclear program. And I think what really hangs in the balance is the escalation of a war, because there are threats coming both from Washington as well as Tehran. And Iran has actually vowed to retaliate ferociously against the US should an attack actually come through to the country. So I think that would pose a threat to oil supply within the region, because it would be more widespread, not just in Iran, but also surrounding territories.
Yeah. All right. That's the one pressure at the moment. Tomorrow we got the budget. It's the big day for Enoch Godongwana. How's our rand looking ahead of the budget?
Our rand has been hovering around, 15.9 to about 16.06 range this week. We haven't seen crazy moves as we have over the past couple of weeks. We saw it strengthening quite a bit. But I think, markets are honestly anticipating positive commentary from the finance minister. And I think one key thing was that, the revenue collections have been higher on the back of what we've been seeing with the metal prices surging. That the collections are higher, and the commodity prices of platinum and gold being, one of the tailwinds, as well as higher VAT and excess duty collections. So, I think that's something that we are looking into. Trading has been, the rand has really been relatively muted. And I think markets are seeking more clarity on economic reforms aimed at stimulating growth, and just basically what the spending will look like for the year.
Yeah. Right. You would have heard in our news bulletin talking about super group and super results. Sure, it's quite a story, aren't they?
Really is quite a story. Revenue increasing by 7%, earnings increasing by about earnings from continuing operations increasing by about 26%. And I think this is really a testament to the influx, to the growth that we've been seeing concerning the influx of those Chinese cars, and how competitive they are compared to our classic German brands that South Africans have been loving. But I think the price point has been really attractive, and we've been seeing a growth in that. I think the the sales volumes increased by about 102%. And I think with the company, having had early exposure to Chinese and Indian brands, that's really positive for them. And I think they could still see room for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Also in the news, Altron's trading statement. What are your observations?
Yeah. So with Altron, it was an interesting one for me because this was like a trading update of a trading update. And so, they did say that they are expected to exceed earnings from the comparative period by about 30%. And I think one thing that really stood out for me was how the firm has basically been in such a great transitional phase, and they've made some improvements and used capital to basically focus on more of their higher margin annuity-based revenues. And I think their platforms segment was the one that actually contributed the most to both revenue as well as operating profit. There is a little bit of some shakiness within the IT segment, but as you said earlier on, they are moving from accelerated growth to more moderate growth phase. So I think they really are in a good position.
Absolutely. Now, Transpaco, they had this big deal lined up and the Competition Commission just said no. This is very disappointing for them.
Yes, it really, really was disappointing for them because, there were a couple of trustees that came together there were a couple of trustees that Transpaco had initially spoken to last year. And it's so interesting to see how this deal just fell through. I mean, millions of rands were going to be spent on this deal. And the Competition Commission didn't necessarily, speak about why they decided to basically cut the prospect of the transaction. So I think the Transpaco actually said that they will be in talks with the Competition Commission, and they're likely to come to an agreement, because at the end of the day, the Competition Commission is there to protect jobs as well as ensuring that.
Yeah. It's there for a reason. Yeah, no, it's definitely there for a reason. Right, hold that thought. Before we move on to your stock pick, Boitumelo, let's reflect on some counters that have found favor with your industry peers.
That's called Remgro. Everyone talks about South African companies, South African Inc. companies. Well, here's a great holding company that's got some really good assets, holding pretty well, and it's involved in different industries, from health in terms of Mediclinic, consumer goods, you're getting Distol, RCL Foods, Rainbow, Heineken, financial services, you're getting a big chunk of Outsurance, as well as some shareholding in Discovery and a little bit of FirstRand. And then interestingly, and also a big opportunity, is the infrastructure play, that's telecoms, where they own Dark Fiber Africa and Vumatel.
In this case, process, so you could choose Naspers or process, I guess. What we have seen is some of these global tech stocks sell off quite significantly this year, just around concerns about valuation and also the impact that AI is going to have on their business models in the medium term. But I think what you are going to see is winners and losers, and we believe Process through their various investments, mainly Tencent and the food delivery and the e-commerce assets, is going to be on the winning side.
Right, so Boitumelo, they are to their Remgro. Let's start with them. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Remgro, diversified business, and it has over 20 underlying companies. But I think, just looking at some of their financial statements, they did realize losses in 2024 from their core holdings. But the way that the business is actually structured, the equity accounted profits from the joint ventures as well as the associates can sometimes help offset that balance. And we've also seen management unlocking value for investors through, the e-media holdings and bundling. And it's a good business overall. I'd just prefer to see more stable earnings momentum before increasing exposure to this.
Right. If you want to see more stable earnings, what about Naspers / Process? There you go.
process, yes. We saw some really great earnings numbers coming out from them in the previous financial year. And beyond Tencent, they also have strategic platforms like iFood as well as OLX and other platforms in Latin America and emerging markets. And I do think that the Just Eat acquisition was priced aggressively, but the capital return strategy through buybacks and the longer term growth story for the firm basically makes it quite compelling for allocators within the space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good one.
Quite right. Right. What's your stock pick this Tuesday?
My stock pick this Tuesday is Astral Foods, the poultry producer in the land. And yeah, following the financial losses that it experienced in 2023, we have seen a really great turnaround, from the company. And they've had a good product mix in terms of the animal feed as well as the poultry division, also balancing each other out in turbulent times. The firm does have a great balance sheet and a high asset turnover rate. And I think it will be interesting to see how they fare with the new CFO coming in March. And its recent performance also just makes for a really great turnaround story. So yeah, with that being said, Astral Foods is my stock pick for today.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Lunch. Thank you, Boitumelo. Right, that was independent global market analyst Boitumelo Letsuma.